Truly, thanks for coming. This is pretty intimidating. I am going to talk to you tonight about the rural schools of Norway. They're also referred to as district schools. I'm not going to talk about the one-room schoolhouses here in the village because they really deserve a separate program. So I'm only talking about the ones that were in the country. At one time, over the course of Norway's history, there have been 14 one-room schoolhouses in Norway, out and about. Does anybody know what number of those buildings are still standing? One? No.
I guess four.
Okay. I'm sorry, no one wins the prize. The number is 10 are still standing. And which is actually pretty remarkable. Oh, hello. Thanks for coming. One of my sources of information just walked in the door. The basis of my talk tonight is research that was done for the Historical Society by Richard Vernon in the 1970s and 1980s. He was a professor of the City College of New York and other universities. He taught the history of education and the theory of education. He did some research and published a little booklet for the Society in the 1980s, and so I started with his information, and he did a lot. I've also talked to a number of people who attended or even taught at some of these one-room schoolhouses. I interviewed them in person, over the phone, by email, and just to gather information. And the people I've spoken with have varying memories of their time in these schools. Some really couldn't remember specifics about their lessons or anything, but they could relate a number of mischievous acts. My other sources for this talk, of course, have been information here at the Society. The people who provided some of the photographs that you're going to see. I listened to the oral history of Ruth Noble Greenleaf, who taught for 14 years in a couple of different country schools, and I don't know, 20 years ago or so, she did an oral history for the, I don't remember if it was for the Society or not, but she talked about her teaching days. Of course, I looked at old newspapers and old school reports, and as it turns out, this project is an excellent example of the more you know, the more you don't know. Because the earliest settlements in what became Norway were out in the country. So that's where the first schools were. And the first schools were taught in private homes. Besides this one here from 1790, there was another one in somebody's barn. I don't recall whose, but they held school for a period of a few weeks. And the first schoolhouse was built in 1794. I would love to tromp through the woods and find where it was, but according to old maps, it appears to have been on a road that went between what's now the Country Club Road and the Waterford Road, approximately where the C.A. Stevens estate was, but the road is gone. And of course, unfortunately, the earliest information about Norway of any sort was lost in a fire at the town clerk's home in 1843, and most of the early records were lost, gone. Wrong button. Of the 14 schools, the location is shown. The earliest was opened in 1800 up on Pike Hill. The last one closed in 1967 was the Lake School. Each so-called district was about 1 square mile, and it served that particular neighborhood. The schools generally took the name of the neighborhood, but there have been exceptions to that. For example, what now is we call Noble's Corner, at the time that was called the Upton District, because the Uptons lived there. The Lake School was referred to as the Stevens District, because it was across the road from C.A. Stevens' home. The schools are referred to by their district number sometimes, or quite often in old records. They were numbered 1 through 15. District 7 referred to all of the schools in the village. Then they're roughly numbered in the order that they were built, but there are exceptions to that. Like I just said, Pike Hill was one of the earliest, 1800, but that's district number 6. Go figure, I don't know. I have varying amounts of information for each school, but I'll tell you what I got. During the 1800s, maybe somebody knows the answer to this question, different schools had different length terms. I haven't figured out why they were different, just making this up, but the Millettville school went for 6 weeks, but the Noble's Corner school went for 10 weeks. I don't know why. But each year there were 2 or 3 terms, their length varying from 6 to 12 weeks, and it was common for the boys to only attend school in the winter because the rest of the year they were needed to help on the farm. So we're going to start with Millettville. The date Millettville was established isn't known, but it was probably one of the 10 districts known to have been in existence in 1825. An 1858 map of Norway shows the school on the west side of the Crockett Ridge Road, north of where the Corlin Road is today. An 1859 school report noted that this is one of the smallest schools in town. A new schoolhouse is much needed in this district. This building burned in 1912, and a new school was built nearby in 1913. Millettville was temporarily closed in 1928 and then closed for good in 1936. Sometime after 1936, the town sold the building and it became a summer residence. And there's another picture of Millettville taken before the building burned in 1912. And there is the building that was built after the fire, that was a school before it was ultimately closed and became a residence. And this building burned down within the last few years. I don't know exactly when. But I guess, I don't know if this served as a year-round residence or a summer residence. Used it as a small camp, I guess, because it couldn't have been very big. And of course, this is the site, what the site looks like today, approximately where the Millettville School was. Jagger. I don't have a picture of the Jagger School when it was a school. In June 1821, land was conveyed to school district number 4, and this could be the date that the Jagger School was built up on the Jagger Road between Hemingway and Town Farm Roads. Classes were suspended from 1915 to 1920 due to a lack of pupils, and it was closed permanently in 1938. A 2-story addition has been made to that building, and this is what it looks like today. Or I should say, this is what it looked like. That's what it looked like about a month ago when I took the picture. Pike Hill. Another one where I don't have a picture of it as a school. Like I said, the first school was erected in 1800. This building here was built in 1856 and was described as a good, commodious schoolhouse. And it remained in use until 1914. Excuse me. It was located up at the top of Pike Hill between the Parsons and Old Stage Roads, on the flat before you get to the Old Stage Road. It was converted to a residence, and which has since been torn down. This isn't a very good picture, but it shows it as a residence. But this lousy picture shows, at least allows you to know where it was, because this is what it looks like today. That garage is still standing, and sadly, what had been the school gone. The building was taken down in 1992. There's this document. This is an 1807 document where subscribers are promising to pay a proportion per child to hire a teacher for the Pike Hill School. At the time, it was called the Southeast District. There's some big names in our early history there, and it says, because it lists the subscriber, how many kids they're paying for, and what the sum was. But there's Henry Rust and Joseph Rust, who were the sons of Norway's founder, Captain Henry Rust. Henry the Younger went on to be the first treasurer of Oxford County. Joseph went on to be the first register of deeds. I wish you know that. There's a Mr. Gallison up there. He was a hat maker. Increase Robinson, the fourth name down, he built the house next door, over here. Levi Bartlett was a blacksmith. Samuel Ames, right near the bottom. He ran the first mill here in the village, and was considered the first resident of the village. They built a mill up here right at the outlet of the lake. Bailey Bodwell on the bottom was a businessman whose fortunes rose and fell 2 or 3 times. He'd make a ton of money and he'd go bankrupt. And he'd make a ton of money and he'd go bankrupt.
He must have a long answer.
You know, I don't know. Sadly, he killed himself with his last business failure. This is the minutes of an 1809 meeting of citizens of District 6, also referred to here as the Southeast District, Pike Hill, and the school business that was discussed. I don't know how well you can read that. Some of it is, you know, to vote to have a moderator for the meeting and this and that. They want to build a porch. They wanted to build a chimney on said porch. They apparently felt it was necessary to build a necessary. I don't know what they used before they built the outhouse. So it, 1807, that was a long time ago. Is that what it's, that they voted for 100 and I think that says $6.
Yeah, $6.
Yeah, for repairing the schoolhouse. $106. New porch, new chimney, outhouse. Frost Hill. Some of you who I have spoken to, I don't remember if I talked to you. I know I talked to you, Julie, about I couldn't find the Frost Hill School. Where was the Frost Hill School? Well, I found it.
You did.
I did. I was misled by an old map. The date the Frost Hill School was built isn't known. But it was one of the 14 districts in 1843. It was located, and this is why I couldn't find it, on the Harrison side of Frost Hill. The school report of 1858 indicates the school was in need of repair, so the building must have been in place for some time. It started to need repair. The school was closed in 1937 with 9 pupils attending. It then became a residence until at least the 1980s, but it now appears abandoned. That's what it looks like now. That previous picture it's hard to get the perspective from that picture. Boy, you know the kids hanging out the windows. Kids are out of control even then. But this building is truly tiny, tiny. I couldn't believe it, because first of all, I was so excited I found it. And it's interesting that this, which it has been turned into a residence, but it does appear abandoned. It's got a bell tower on it. When it was a schoolhouse, it didn't have a bell tower. But it is located on what's now called the Daniels Road. If you go out the Harrison Road and go up the Thomas Hill Road, Daniels Road goes off to the right. And at one time, I'm sure that was a continuation of the Frost Hill Roads, coming down the Harrison side.
It was.
Yeah. And so, school didn't move, the road changed, and I found it.
Is it near the top? So
No, actually, it's not very far from the Thomas Hill Road.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
half a mile, maybe?
Yeah.
Actually, no, it wasn't. It isn't the first building you come to. There's a couple of houses before that, but it's not very far. Norway Center was just up the hill from Norway Center Church, still there. School began at Norway Center in 1804, but the exact year the schoolhouse was built isn't known. In school reports, repairs are noted over the years, but there's no report of destruction by fire or building a new structure. So it's possible that this is the oldest remaining building in Norway that served as a school. This was what was opened in 1804. School closed in 1926 when the number of students declined to 7. It's been remodeled into a residence and remains at the same location. And ironically, Richard Gernon, who researched this is based, he lived in the Norway Center School. That was his residence. Here's the same picture with a little map drawn by Ada Hobbs Cox, who was a Norway resident and taught in some of the schools. And I expect that this layout is probably pretty much the same for all schools. Kids, I brought my laser pointer. Now I got 2 things to press buttons. This is going to be good. But in school, the kids sat here. There's a stove, teacher's desk, the boys' coat room, the girls' coat room, and then the boys and girls' bathrooms in the back, and then the store, back in the woodshed. The main entrance and the only entrance is theirs. And so that's a map of that building. Yeah, this was drawn for the society several years ago by Ada Hobbs Cox. She attended the Norway Center School, later taught there. She was also the 22nd recipient of Norway's Boston Post cane, which was right over here, just as a little added bonus. And that's how it appears today. The day I went by, they just put on a shiny new roof. The teacher in the center is Ruth Noble Greenwood. Ruth Noble in this picture. She had 18 students. She taught 7 grades while at the Norway Center School. She taught the Norway Center for 2 years. She previously taught at Patch Mountain School in Greenwood. She spent a year at the Pierce School, which we haven't gotten to yet. And then she was at Pierce School for 2 years before going to Norway Center. In this picture, she is 22 or 23 years old. In every class picture, or pictures of students that I've had access to put this together, there's something touching or amusing about every class picture. This little girl right here, doesn't she look like a little angel? With her hands folded. But then this fella here, I guess he wasn't ready to have a picture taken.
Do you have the names of
for children? No, not in all instances. And to be perfectly honest, I don't remember. I don't think so. And which is a shame, because as time goes by, the odds of knowing, you know, if any of these students are still alive, what? Well, they're gone. You know, because I mean, the youngest are what, 5 in 1918? Going on to the Chapel District, the first schoolhouse was built in 1838 up the hill from the intersection of the Morse and Dunn roads up in North Norway. New building was erected at the same location in 1878. Around 1912, classes alternated between the Chapel School and the Pierce schools because of low attendance. The Chapel School was closed in 1952 and was moved a short distance up the Dunn Road and was attached to an existing residence where it remains today. Wow. Whoops. Oh my God. Excuse me. Hang on. Sorry, you weren't supposed to see that just yet. Common to all of these country schools, there wasn't any running water. So water had to be toted in every day. At the Chapel School, it came from a stream on a farm across the road. And one day, the designated water carrier, who is present this evening, was met by someone who ordered him to stop getting the water there. Why? And you don't know why. They just got an attitude.
Attitude problem.
Yeah, okay. So, Miss Gray, the teacher, had to tote water from home over Sandy Creek in South Bridgeton every day. Because the person across the road got an attitude. I feel fortunate to have been able to talk to Phyllis Whitney Dow, who taught at the Chapel School for 6 months. She was filling in for a teacher who left. And her memories of teaching those 6 months are all good, except the time the school needed more firewood. And she notified the superintendent's office, and firewood was delivered that night or in the night. But the next day she discovered they just dumped it right in front of the door. So one of her duties was, I mean, as the teacher, she had to go down to school early and barely wearing. Oh, there you are, right in there. Correct me if I'm wrong. She'd have to go down to school in the winter, start the fire, go back up to where she was boarding, have breakfast, and then come back and, you know, start school. So to have to pull all that firewood away from the door, that probably wasn't a very good day. Phyllis described that her class of 8 as all good kids. They ranged from kindergarten to 7th grade. Yes, that's it. Right. Well, here we have a picture of the students of the Chapel School in, I'm going to guess, the spring term based on how they're dressed, 1948. A couple of these folks are present here tonight. And perfect attendance seems to have always been noted in the newspaper. And they look like a happy group, don't you think? This group doesn't appear quite so happy. This little girl, there's some good Norway names there. I've been fortunate to get quite a few pictures from the Chapel School. These pictures are a little bit older, from the early 1930s, and over here in this picture, there's just part of a picture. You see this little girl right here who's not paying attention? She better be paying attention tonight. That's Marion Ave.
I was visiting that day.
Because I know you're talking to your brother. He's distracting you. And here's another chapel school picture, and I like this one because, you know, talk about mischievous. Look at what's on this kid. I don't know, this fella's getting ready to throw a ball, the photographer, and these two were having some sort of a discussion. Fortunately, we do know who was in this picture from 1925.
Which one? 8.
The Pierce District. 1857 school report mentions the Pierce School for the first time. It was located on the Dunn Road just before the intersection with the Shed Road, way up in northwest Norway. Way up. This building is this is a picture of the new building that was built in 1886. The school was closed in 1922 because there were only 6 students. Sometime after it closed, it was moved quite a distance from up in northwest Norway to the west side of the lower Crockett Ridge Road. Turned into a residence, and this is what it looked like last month. Still there. Sutton district. The date the first Sutton school was built isn't known, but it was listed among Norway's district schools in 1843. A school report in 1857 noted it as a, quote, a poor apology for a schoolhouse, a better house is hoped for, unquote. The school burned in 1859 and a new one was built in 1861. It was located on the Sodom Road, west of the Ricker Road, but before you cross the Crooked River. The school closed in 1920 with 9 pupils attending. The building sat unused for a number of years until it was purchased in 1940, and it was abandoned in about 1945. And in the winter of 1952, which apparently was noted for a lot of snow, the heavy snow weakened the roof where the owner had installed dormer windows in working on turning it into a residence or a camp or whatever. But there was so much snow in 1952, it weakened the roof. And so they abandoned the building, the owner. And the building reverted back to the Holden family. And it was knocked down, and the lumber was used by Don Holden to build a camp nearby. So here's the building partly torn down. George Buzz Holden provided me with this picture, and that's him feeling apparently quite superior standing there on the wreckage. I was very surprised to learn that the town formally recognized a homeschooling arrangement that occurred after the Sodom school closed. Goldie Frost Holden is Don Holden's mother and Beverly Holden Shaw's grandmother. She had been a teacher. Is that correct? Yeah. And so she taught a homeschool. Sometimes it was just her own children, or child or children. Sometimes she would have others. And in the school reports from 1932 to 1943, where they list all the teachers' salaries, they include Mrs. Holden. I don't know how her salary was based on how many students she had, or what. In a way, it kind of appeared random. But she got a stipend from the town to teach school in her home. And Don Holden recalls it's temporary sawmills would come to the neighborhood to cut down timber. And those families would have children, and so the superintendent would come to his mother's to make arrangements that the children of these millers would attend school for as long as they were there working in the woods. I was totally surprised to learn that. The Holt District. School began, the Holt School in 1857. I couldn't find another one, I couldn't find a picture of it as a school. The building appears on an 1880 map, but not on an 1858 map. And it supposedly was built in 1857. The 1869 school report notes that the schoolhouses no longer fit for school purposes. I guess they repaired it because it stayed open until 1923. On the Shed Road, a short distance up from the Waterford Road. Still there. There it is. I'm not sure which section of the house was the school. I think it's what you see on the right. I'm just guessing. But yeah, you turn on...
118.
Yes, yes. Because the Shed Road is opposite the end of the Town Farm Road.
Yes.
Forms the four corners. Turn right, and it's just up there on the left.
On the left.
Yes.
Okay.
And it looks just like that. Yep. Oh, I don't know. Hey, Crockett Ridge. Yes, it's still there, the residence at the corner of Outer Pleasant Street and the Crockett Ridge Road, just across from the Haywood Club. First school for Crockett Ridge was built in 1807, approximately where Cove to Cove Lane is today. That's my best guess based on some maps. In 1844, land was conveyed to District 8, and this may be where the this schoolhouse was built. An 1858 map shows the school at this location, but it's not known if the school building was moved to this site or a new building was erected here. School reports show many repairs to the building. Vandals damaged it so badly in 1859 that classes had to be held in a private home for several weeks. The school was closed in 1943, and the building is now a residence. That's what it looks like now. As I said, in talking to the people I've spoken with, their memories of these schools, many remembered pranks of various intensity. I'll put it that way. A direct quote: "School was a lot of fun, but we raised a bit of hell." I asked if the students got disciplined and was told, "Oh God, yes." I'm not revealing my sources. Well, I know who said that. I learned about the times some boys plugged up the chimney and filled the building with smoke from the wood fire. I also learned about some other pranks that I'm not going to repeat because a victim might be here tonight. But I'll only say that one of them concerned the outhouse. The Jones District. First school was built in 1806 on the Shed Road near where it intersects with the McIntyre Road. It burned in January 1819, and this replacement was built that summer. Town school reports from 1866 and 1867 noted the building suffered from poor conditions and was worn out and unfit for use. The school was closed in 1894, and the seats were moved to the Holt School, just down the Shed Road or the Waterford Road. After closing, the building was turned into a dwelling, but it burned down in the 1950s. Nobles Corner.
Yeah.
Land was conveyed to School District 11 in 1830. But the date the school was established isn't known. It was one of the 14 districts in 1843. The original school building was moved and became part of a residence in 1852. And that building collapsed in the 1930s. New school was built in 1852. Arthur C.A. Stevens attended school in the old building, but taught school in this building. The school was closed in 1921 and converted to a residence, and it still stands around the pond road near the intersection of Upton Brothers Road. Excuse me just a moment. Smith's Corner. First schoolhouse built in 1807 near the intersection of Morris and Patch Mountain Roads. That building was taken down in 1833, and a new school was built a little further up the Patch Mountain Road. Fire destroyed that school in 1919, and fires are pretty common, I guess, with wood stoves. But it was rebuilt in 1920. And this building dates from. And it closed in 1959 and and in the early 1960s it was moved further up Patch Mountain Road, turned into a residence, and that's what it looks like today. Here's some kids from the Swiss Corner School. Some of the kids that were in one of the chapel school pictures I showed you a little while back, then are in this Swiss Corner School picture. When the chapel closed, they had to travel a little bit further to go to school. Because as I said earlier, the first school serving the Norway Lake area was built in 1794 on a road that's disappeared. That school was destroyed by fire in 1816 and was rebuilt in 1817. An 1858 map shows the school at the old location. The school report of 1868 stated a new schoolhouse for District 5 had been built on a beautiful site. And for once, they weren't fudging that at all. I mean, you better agree, there's no better place for location for a schoolhouse than right where it is. The present school building, because this is the present school building on the Lake Road, it closed in 1967 when the 3 one-room schoolhouses here in town closed. In my student days, I went to the upper primary, started in 1960. So you don't have to do the arithmetic, that makes me almost 58 years old, okay? But when I was a kid in school, this was the proverbial little red schoolhouse. I learned from putting this together that the previous generation or two meant the whole school when they talked about the little red schoolhouse. So now it's the little green house, but this was always, we always called this the little red schoolhouse. There, of course, there it is today. It's red. This is I can't positively identify this as the Lake School, but we think that it is. There's 3 windows over on the right that are partially blocked by a blackboard. Before they renovated the Lake School, it had 3 windows on each side. If you were to blow up this picture just a little bit, there's a poem written on the blackboard back there that says, "I wonder why, as years go by, the overall boys in blue, and Molly and May do not grow gray as other people do. Now, this photograph is marked on the back as having been taken by a photographer in Newburyport, Massachusetts. But of course, school pictures back then were taken by itinerant photographers who traveled around. And if you were to blow up the picture even more, on the go back over here on the far right of the blackboard, or right over here, is written, and it's almost impossible to see. I've doctored on the picture to try to make it legible, but it says grade 2, April 3rd, and I think the year is 1925. It kind of fades out. You can see the 19s pretty clearly.
Yeah.
But you can't, and I think it's a 2, and I sort of think it's a 5.
Looks like a 2.
Excuse me?
It looks like a 2.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pat. But there's more than second graders in this picture. You know, so I don't know why it says grade 2 over here, because some of these boys look a little older than second grade. Well, I mean, just because they're older, maybe they're going to be second grade. I just thought of that.
That would be cool.
Excuse me. Lining up for recess, all I can say is, what's with the box? These 2 kids sitting in this wooden box, isn't that great? I can't quite tell if, at first I thought that this little boy, this one here, or the other one was holding like a handle or a rope. They were dragging the kids in, I don't know. But fantastic picture. This, I've got to blow up some. This is a picture of the Norway Lake School Association reunion. And it appears that everybody who are going to the lake school, every summer, they have a picnic and things like that. And did Herb Adams identify these people today? Yes, I think so. And I had the picture's so big, I had to cut it up into 3 pieces to even get it to show. But there's some good, whoops, I'm sorry. Good Norway Lake names on these pictures. You know, Wood, Tucker, and
Mildred Wood.
Doris Rodding, Grace Flood Dunham. Who is that, Esther?
Esther's mother.
Really? Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.
That was a reunion, and you had a schoolhouse reunion.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I had to divide this up into 3 sections to get everybody pictured. This young man right here is Herb Adams' father.
Really?
Yes. And, yeah, Herbert M. Adams. Helen Tucker, Effie Tucker, Laura Thurston, some great Norway Lake names. And, oh yeah, Mylan Bennett and Mrs. Bennett. Yes, Mylan Bennett. Right here. It was Mrs. Caretaker of the CAC state. And
George Floss.
Bill Tucker.
Sage right there, the third one in.
And of course, there's a number of people that aren't known. Someone named Ariel.
Yep.
Looks like Falmouth to me. Oh, okay. Falmouth. Anyway, according to the August 27th, 1926 Advertiser, this was the 23rd annual reunion of the Norway Lake School Association. And the advertiser says a bountiful dinner was served. Still and moving pictures were taken. New officers were elected, and a program of 6 readings, 7 remarks, and 1 violin solo was kept. The advertiser also noted that many were kept away from attending by the whooping cough. Let me talk a little bit about school life, activities at schools. Because until the late 1800s, the schools were supported by the residents of the district. And the school was often the social hub of the neighborhood, way out there in northwest Norway or wherever. Fundraisers were held, to support school improvements, provide additional equipment, because they comment here that, since October they've raised $25 they've used to purchase an organ and sash curtains. And of course they have entertainment, they had ice cream, lemonade, and selections from the zonophone, pleasingly rendered. Who knows what a zonophone is? I'm trying to give away another Historical Society pen. A zonophone is an early form of a record player. I looked it up. An early form of a record player, or a Victrola, like a predecessor to Edison's Victrola. Here's a little article about activities at the Hope School, and all school events seem to feature entertainment. And in this instance, there's different readings and stuff. What struck me, I gotta find it now, is this reading called The Kicking Habit. Rather than Kicking the Habit, I'm not sure. And this is from 1906. Mary, who is this Elton House?
Well, it has to be my father. I don't know.
Marion Hobbs was Ada Hobbs Cox's sister.
What year is it?
This is 1906.
That would have been my father.
Okay. He did a declamation, which I don't know, is that a recitation or Mama getting tea? And so they, because they're raising money also. The name of the organization is the Hope School Improvement. Okay, continuing on, I'm going to talk a little bit about curriculum way back over the course of many years. Ruth Noble Greenleaf, who taught between 1915 and 1922, and then again between 1932 and 1939, stated that grades 1 and 2 were taught reading, numbers, writing, and spelling. And grades 3 through 8 were taught arithmetic, language, geography, history, health, reading, writing, and spelling. Art and music were taught at the teacher's discretion or ability. More recently, in the 1940s, I learned that music was taught once a week in the country schools, and Bess Claim would take Jake's taxi to school to Bess to drive. She probably would have walked. Textbooks. I found a few examples of textbooks that were used here in Norway, including this one. The 1866 school report states that this book was purchased for use, and I was struck by the name of the author. Quackenboss? Quackenbooze? I don't know. But this is an English book, grammar. And Mrs. Greenleaf said that textbooks in arithmetic, language, geography, history, health, reading, and spelling were used, along with music songbooks. Each student was given a lead pencil, and the school had paper, flashcards, pens, ink and copy books for penmanship practice, workbooks, maps and a globe, and a pitch pipe, although some schools had a piano. This is, on the left is Monroe's first steps in spelling, and on the right is Greenleaf's first lessons in numbers that were used starting in the 1890s. And rats appear in a lot of books. I got this one here, and then over here we've got a sentence that cat ran after 2 rats, she caught 1. How many got away? I find it a little bit creepy that rats is something these kids apparently get relate to. This is an example of Stickney's readers. There were levels 1 through 6 that were used starting in 1895. But, I mean, I'm a townie. I grew up here in town. But if it has horns, it's not a cow, right? Is that correct? And that was our biology book. A beginning reading book. Do you see Ned and cows? Ned likes to go for the cows. I grew up on Big Jane and Sally. Yes. More emphasis was placed on the art of penmanship in the late 1800s. The Norway schools changed from the flowery writing system that we associate with the 1800s to so-called vertical writing in 1898. In the 19-teens, they began teaching what's called the Palmer method of handwriting, which stressed speed plus legibility. Students could complete their exercise books and send them away, and if the exercises were correct, the student was awarded a pin. And as the pins got fancier as you progressed through the levels, is that correct? And Mr. White mentioned that I never heard of this till talking to Mr. White, and he's still proud of his Palmer method pin from 75 or 80 years ago. And of course, in the early years, the kids and the teachers walked to schools. I suppose you could ride a horse, I guess. And when a school closed, kids had to be transported to the nearest school. Initially by horse and wagon, and then of course by bus. And what was called a bus was quite often a truck with some chairs and benches thrown in the back, like this example here. With Mr. Reserve, the bus driver. I'm sure that's an old Model T truck, maybe a Model A. And I think this is delightful. This little homemade notepad with arithmetic lessons. I believe I didn't check everything, but I believe the arithmetic is correct, but it seems like Mr. Howe was more interested in drawing than he was doing his arithmetic, but he must have done okay because he went on to be High Sheriff of Washington County. So.
His son.
Oh, is this your father's?
Yeah.
Rather than your brother? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was your brother's. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. A little boy, yes. Okay, I kind of worried. I wanted to talk a little bit about school administration, but I wasn't sure how to make it interesting. But we're going to try. Yeah. Of course, in the 1800s, the district schools were the responsibility of the residents of the district. They had to raise the money to support the school. And they would hire an agent who was responsible for hiring the teacher, responsible for ensuring the teacher provided a good education, responsible for the maintenance of the school. And this is an 1832 document notifying the residents of what's here is called the French District, which came to be known as the Chapel District, that a meeting was to be held to discuss the business of building a school. And it reads very similar to a town meeting warrant. That you're supposed to show up, and that you're supposed to elect a clerk, and you're supposed to choose an agent, and what sum of money is to be raised to build the school. And apparently it took 6 years to build the school, because the first chapel school wasn't built until 1838, and they're talking about it in 1832. The back of this document, which I didn't take a picture of, states that the notice was posted at Amos Upton's mill and at the home of James French, which is where this meeting was held. In addition, the Mr. Pingree, who wrote this, was the process server, or whatever you would call it. He notified each person individually, by writing or otherwise, to let them know that they were having this meeting to decide to talk about building a school.
I wonder if the residents of town had paid to do the same thing that the out-of-town residents.
You know, I don't know, but the way when they talk about the village schools, and they refer to that as District 7, and then they'll further refer to a particular school. Other than that, they talk about them just like they talk about the country school. So maybe the town people had to pay to support District 7, yeah, which included several schools. The school committee tried to visit each school a couple times a year to judge the effectiveness of the teacher and the progress of the students. In 1854, Sylvanus Cobb Jr., the noted Norway author, was the chairman of the school committee. He visited the Lake School to look into a complaint, and after examining the matter, the teacher was dismissed and the school was closed. There was trouble for a few weeks in the winter term. Some larger boys rebelled against the teacher and threw him into a snowdrift. So they fired the teacher. Mr. Cobb felt that the teacher was at fault for lack of management. The remainder of the school committee opposed that decision, but it stuck. I don't know if teachers feel that way now about administrators or whatever, but you know, it's still making it hard. And just these little snippets that I picked out of some school reports makes it sound like 1866 was a bad year and the whole school was particularly bad. But in these old school reports, they go school by school and comment on the teacher or teachers. The teachers changed each term. Some of the school reports all sound gossipy. But they try to be complimentary toward a teacher. They will note that it's, considering it was her first year, you know, she did well, is what they say. But apparently if there were problems, they weren't afraid to mince words. I like the one that, the middle one here, at the commencement, the start of school, we found it to be quite too noisy and disorderly. The teacher apparently was unable to control the turbulent elements opposing. When you were a teacher, Elaine, did you have turbulent elements? I guess. In 1894, Bayne law changed. The name of the law is an act to abolish school districts and provide for more efficient supervision of public schools. Okay. And the towns took possession and direct responsibility for all schools within the town. Then the system of district schools was abolished. The property, buildings, and equipment that had previously belonged to each district were appraised, and that sum was reimbursed to the residents of the district. Schools that had less than 8 students by law had to be closed, with exceptions, of course, and Millettville is an exception. They had less than 8 students, but the residents of the district didn't want to close the school, I'm sure, because it was quite a distance to the next one. And so at town meeting, the town voted to keep the Millettville school open. That was the one way to keep a school open that had less than 8 students or less. The town would choose to keep it open. Of course, when the decisions came to close a school, you had to weigh the cost of transporting kids to another school versus the cost of keeping a school open. Obviously, it eventually got cheaper to transport them. But it seems that the problems then are the same as they are today. Finding and keeping good teachers. Low pay was a barrier. The board didn't like breaking in brand new teachers only to have them leave in a year or two for a higher paying position. Then the district, the school administration made a deliberate effort to try to hire local people, figuring they'd stay home. And eventually it was successful. The worst times were during wartime, during World War I and World War II. Very difficult to find teachers. They would hire some kids, some women that hadn't even finished high school yet. And, they passed some sort of test and they became a teacher. Almost done. I truly enjoyed talking to everybody who I talked to for this. I've identified a number of other people to talk to, but it was a lot of fun listening, talking to these folks, and I will tell you that I have not told you everything that I learned. But everybody agreed that the one-room school, provided a superior education. I suppose you can't go back, but maybe we ought to. I welcome any additional information anybody may have. I would love to have a copy of any pictures of the schools and the students. Particularly would like pictures of the interior of schools, because I can see now that this is going to be an ongoing thing. Someone suggested I write a book. Not yet. Not yet. Let me ask one question. All right, who in here went to a one-room schoolhouse anywhere? All right, who went to a one-room schoolhouse here in Norway? All right, Okay. Someday I hope to do a presentation on the village schools, but that truly is a whole separate program. Okay.
So do we want to... Great job.
Thank you. All right, questions, comments, discussion?
Good thing you didn't say everything.
That's right. I told you, Larry, I was not going to reveal myself. But I tell you, the outhouse story is big fun. Yes.
Sounded like it was one right there.
Well, yes, there were 3 one-room schoolhouses that are referred to as the village schools. One is over here where the Art Center has been, across the Universalist Church. Another one is down on Lower Main Street, just a little past the hospital. And then there was a third one over on Tucker Street, if you're familiar with that. It's been torn down and turned into a parking lot. Those are the 3 one-room schoolhouses in town, for the town kids.
So the village schools are after 1894 then? These are all closed.
Oh no, the upper primary, this one here was built like 1806. But
No, but you said another time you talked about the village school.
That's correct, yes.
They started after 1891?
Oh, no, they were before. They were, you know, about the same time. The first one was built in 1906, but just, they just need to be treated separately. In my opinion, they need to be treated separately, since I'm the one talking. Questions? Yes, Pat?
Esther and I seem to disagree with the diagram of the lake school. We don't think it is the diagram.
Oh, the photograph of...
Yeah, no, the hand drawing.
Oh, that was the Norway Center school.
No, Norway Center, okay.
Yes, okay. You still disagree?
Yeah, right, no,
Okay.
we did the lake school.
Yes, okay.
One special comment, I think the structure of these buildings, one-room schoolhouse, the fact that they've become homes, is a plus to the whoever built these buildings.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty rugged. Have to be.
Where did they get the materials from, and were they standard among the schools?
I mean, the textbooks and things. I don't know that they were standard within the district until the town took it. I expect that they probably were not. One school would use one arithmetic book, another school would use another. Maybe they didn't have books. Maybe the teacher just had, they didn't have textbooks for each student. The teacher just taught. But once the town took over everything, then yes, everything was standardized. I have up here 3 examples of textbooks. 2 of them are from Norway. One of them's in the 1940s. The other 2 are from the 1800s. And one of them is not a Norway book, it's an old textbook that you're welcome to look at. Maybe one of you here actually learned to read from the book Busy World. Thank you very much.